Ukrainian drone strike deep into Russian territory continue while the Russian armed forces keep advancing, especially in the Donbas. At the same time, Ukrainian special forces seem to have teamed up with rebels in Mali to strike against Wagner troops. We'll talk about this as well as about other developments along the front line and political developments, international aid, troop generation, etc. in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. The reports about drone attacks against oil targets and airfields are continuing. Engels Air Force Base has been attacked again. This is the Air Force Base where the Russians have their strategic bombers, the Tupolev 160 and the Tupolev 95. Both types are stationed there. Damage reports are viable damage reports, I think is the word. So basically, proven damage reports are still lacking. I have not seen any proof that something was hit there that is worth reporting. Still, though, the airfield was attacked. The refinery in Ryazan was also attacked, and the oil depot in Polevaya. At least 3 tanks have burned down. Also in Kursk, there was an explosion in a power station in according to reports, it led to blackouts in bigger areas. The Ukrainian side, on the other hand, is reporting that Russia has started to use drones made out of styrofoam and plywood. Some of them were using cameras and SIM cards on board, probably, and this is the guess, to locate Ukrainians' air defense systems, the mobile groups that strike the drones. So the Russians have found a way to try to eliminate those, or to start the process of eliminating what makes the Shahid drones far less efficient than in the past. On the northern front line, we have reports about Ukrainian counterattacks in Staritsia, which is here. No reports about successes though, but in Vovchansk we have a minor Ukrainian advance that is already visible here on the map, I think. We have the Ukrainians crossing the road here towards the west at more or less this area here. We see them again here. In the past we had Ukrainian positions here, up there, and I think there as well. So the situation seems to be somewhat fluid. That this is, like here it's indicated that these are cut-off troops is probably not the case. Otherwise we would have already seen some successes. We also have Riba saying that the eastern part of the plant here that you can see here is not even fully under Russian control. Riba, just to remind you, is a one of the leading Russian mill bloggers, and they are not claiming that they have full control here. They also do not claim Russian presence south of the Vovcha. So while we had geolocation of Russian troops, I think it was here, it seems to have been cleared. There are no more reports about Russian troops south of the river. On the Eastern Front, we do not have any change in territory, but we have a report on Telegram that claims that an ATACMS strike was successful on a training location in Luhansk. 19 soldiers were killed, 71 were wounded. This is claims. I do not see any proof of this, so it might be true, it might not be true. As of now, we can't really confirm it. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have a geolocation from Ivano-Darivka. And this is interesting because it shows us that the Ukrainians are in the western part. Now, this means Ukrainians are here. And this is where the Russians have raised their flags roughly a week ago. As far as the overall control is in this region, it remains a mystery. So we can guess that the western part here is probably under Ukrainian control, the western part here, but what happens to the rest is unknown. Whether the front line is actually like this now, somewhere around this, which would include Spearnet having fallen, I cannot say. We have visual evidence, as said a couple of times in the past. We had visual evidence of the Russians in here, but wherever I look at the maps, I do not see the area being put in Russian control, not even in some of the pro-Russian maps. So the whole situation is unclear. I'll try to keep an eye on it. At some point, we'll probably have a confirmation one way or the other. But as of now, all we do know is that the Ukrainians are in the western part of Ivano-Darivka. But there again, they have been drone dropped. So that could mean the front line is 50 meters away. It could also mean that it's a kilometer away. It simply doesn't mean much, except that the Ukrainians were there recently. Further south, no change in Chasiv Yar. Some rumors, some Russian claims that they gained additional ground, but I do not see that the Russians have crossed the canal as of now. So far, the front line seems to be holding there. And in south of here, in Pivnichne, the Ukrainians actually managed to successfully counterattack, as we can see here in the geolocation. So in the past, they have been here. Now they're in the southern part here. So it seems the Ukrainians are slowly pushing down this direction here and have reached this point in latest geolocations. The video there is actually quite interesting because it shows fairly proficient soldiers with good equipment, modern attachments, kitted out rifles. So it seems like a better unit is currently being employed here and doing the counterattacks. So those counterattacks have definitely had some success, even though the change in territorial advance is no more than 400 meters since the last geolocation from this point. But still, Ukrainians seem to have at least to somewhat push the Russians back in this area. Let's go further west to the area of Avdiivka. Here we have, first let's start with a picture from the Russian Telegram. This is interesting here because this is a pro-Russian geolocation Telegram channel, which only shows the town of Progress and Vovce barely being reached here, while at the same time we have here, this is Progress, this is Vovce, and you can see where the front line is. This is a fairly accurate map, so they do not claim further advances still in this direction, while we have the pro-Ukrainian channels actually claiming an additional Russian advance of roughly almost 4 kilometers. As I said in the past, and some of you might be new here, in this case I take the Ukrainian maps for granted, as obviously it's more likely that the Ukrainians are right when they admit defeat than if they claim success, and I do it the other way around too. For instance, during the Ukrainian counteroffensive, I took the Russian admission of defeat as a given if I didn't have an exact geolocation. But let's go back to the developments here. We have changes in territorial advances. The Russians have advanced since the last situation report roughly all of this here. All of this they have gained. So they have advanced 2.5 to 3 kilometers since we had the last situation report. They keep advancing here along the railroad line and manage to widen their break into their advance into the Ukrainian lines in both directions, among that reaching Vesele as of now. The Ukrainians have also lost the two tree lines here south of Vostyshenka. These two tree lines have fallen into the Russian hands here, this one and this one. Before, the front line was roughly like this. Now this has fallen into Russian hands here as well. The Russians were successful in this direction, as I already said, and they have now definitely taken Novoselivka-Persha. We have a geolocation here as well showing the Russians in the western part. Here the deep state map has more or less shown it already. We had geolocations here, I think down here, and recently somewhere here. So Novoselivka-Persha has completely fallen into Russian hands. The Russians kept advancing apart from that as well. Roughly this area has fallen, and south of Novoselivka-Persha down to Yasnobrudivka, the Russians gained several hundred meters in depth. In differentiating depth, roughly this has fallen into the Russian hands as well here between the two towns. So they keep advancing through the tree lines here, pushing the Ukrainians ever further west. South of it, I do not have any change until we reach Krasnohorivka, and here Krasnohorivka is about to fall to the Russians as well, as was to be expected. We have a fresh geolocation here now. This should be at this point, more or less. The Ukrainian mill bloggers adjust their map roughly by this over the last few days, so they admit the loss of all this area here. And we had a geolocation recently of the Russians here, so we see that there's only some contested area left here in the northwest, and there are still some claims that the Ukrainians might have some presence around here, even though a fresh geolocation showed a Russian BMP driving around here to there. Here it suddenly explodes. I have no clue why. I looked at the video in detail and couldn't see what hit it, but before that it drove like here without being even engaged, which would to me indicate that the Ukrainians are at best at this point here, as we can see on the map, but that this here shouldn't be Ukrainian presence anymore. So yes, so Krasnohorivka is over 95% in Russian hands, and it seems to be a matter of at most days until the northwestern part of the town is fully under Russian control. Further south, the Russians have also advanced at Konstantinivka. Here we have the south of Konstantinivka. Let me quickly check. Yeah, this is down here. Here the Russians have advanced roughly up to here. There it is. We see a Russian presence being geolocated right down here. That should be more or less at this point. Here they were attacked, so we do not have any proof that they managed to settle down in these positions here, but we see fresh advances towards the west and attempts to bypass Konstantinivka in the south. Further south, the Russians have gained additional positions as well. We have two geolocations showing the serious pressure that is being put upon the 0532. That's the road between Konstantinivka and Vuhledar, and here we have the Russians a mere 1.5 kilometers away from the front line. This is, let me quickly check again. This is, I think here, yeah, exactly at this point. Here the Russians have advanced up to here, so this is a mere 1.5 kilometers, and further south they've had some minor successes until this direction here, and here they are only 2 kilometers away from the road as well. We see them closing in here, and as said, the other one was up here. So the road is, the Russians claim it's under fire control, and increasingly that seems to be the truth. So they have crawling closer to the road here. And interesting as well, the video that is used for the geolocation of the northern advance by the Russians shows just 4 Russian soldiers advancing on that position and taking it. So this shows the thinness of both lines at this point, also obviously forced into them through the presence of drones that doesn't allow bigger concentrations. And at the same time, should the Ukrainians build a bigger fortification, then it would just be a great target for a glide bomb. So we have small groups on both sides advancing and defending at the same time here in the south, but those small groups still keep advancing on the Russian side. Further west, we have a change in Orikhiv. And now we have the Institute for the Study of War saying that Robotina has fallen to the Russians because there's a geolocation, I think, at this point here. As you know, if you watched for a while, I'm of the opinion that Robotina is in Russian hands for probably 2 months already, but now the Institute for the Study of War is saying it as well. We had geolocations all over Robotina. Among up to here was in the past were Russian presences, showing that even the Russians had advanced further than the northern limits of the town itself, which led me to the conclusion that Robotina had fallen probably 2 months ago. Now we have the Institute for the Study of War saying that as well. Generally, the bigger news is probably for this situation report from outside of the war zone here, because Tuareg rebels have killed and decimated a Wagner convoy in Mali. 33 to 80 casualties, fallen Russian soldiers are being reported. Now these were Wagner fighters, which are operating obviously on behest of the Russian government, while they are not regular Russian soldiers. 33 to 80 dead are being reported. It's unclear the exact number now. The numbers are fluctuating, but the lowest number that seems credible is 33. The highest is 80, so it's somewhere in between. There were also several wounded, and they have become prisoners of war. Among them is the administrator of the war zone, the gray zone. This is one of the big pro-Russian Telegram channels, which was always a mouthpiece for the Wagner opinion. And we can see him here, and he has fallen in that convoy. He's one of the dead. Nikita Fedyanin, with just 29 years, he has died at this. The interesting part is too that Wagner participated in the so-called denazification of Ukraine, as we all know. And if we look at the picture here, then we see what he had on his chest. Well, that's a little awkward if you claim to be denazifying Ukraine when you run around with this patch, but I'll leave it to the audience to draw their conclusions. According to reports, the military leader of Wagner, the new one with the codename Lotus, is among the fallen or among the prisoners. There are other claims now that he isn't, so we'll probably learn the truth somewhat soon, as if he's not among the casualties or the prisoners that were taken, then he should probably publish a video fairly soon. But it's possible that Wagner has even lost its military leader in this ambush. Sources are also saying that 2 helicopters were shot down in the event, which tried to come to the aid of the Wagner mercenaries here. And the Tuareg, which is now getting a weird part, the Tuareg are claiming they're going to hand over the Wagner prisoners of war to Ukraine to allow them to punish them for the war crimes they have committed. At the same time, pro-Russian channels were claiming that an exchange of prisoners of war was already negotiated, so supposedly the Russian citizens that were captured would be free at the same time. Though at the same time we have claims that that Ukraine aided this whole here. We see that the Tuareg rebels show a Ukrainian flag, and among them we see faces that are hidden. And here we can clearly see a broad-shouldered, white-skinned male, and here seems to be another fairly light-skinned man. There are claims that Ukrainian special forces are participating in all of this, and the spokesperson for the Ukrainian military intelligence agency, GUR, Andriy Yusov, was saying in a Ukrainian television station that the Tuareg rebels have received the necessary informations to allow for additional operations against the Wagner soldiers. So basically, the GUR is now confirming that they helped the Tuareg, and in general, this would obviously be a smart use if you want to hurt the Russian interests, as the Tuaregs have their own fighting force, and a handful of special forces, let's say 4 to 10, could help them in leading them, could help them with intelligence, could help them with training, with special craft, and could obviously also supply them with surface-to-air weaponry, manpads that could take down helicopters that come to the aid. So it actually seems that after Sudan, we see a second area where the Ukrainians have probably sent small numbers of special forces to help local fighters fight the Russian interests and Russian pro-Russian or Russian forces directly in the African continent. In the partisan area, or sabotage area, we have reports from Moscow. The GUR is claiming that they damaged a Mi-28 and a Kamov 226 in Moscow through sabotage. I have yet to see proof for this if it's true. And in troop generation, the Russians are reporting a fresh usage of a suicide drone that supposedly has a range of 30 kilometers and is assisted by artificial intelligence to allow the continuation of the strike even if electronic warfare is applied. So basically, even if the drone loses its contact with its commander, with its pilot, it will, thanks to AI, continue striking. We've seen that this is facing an entry, that this is being entered into the war zone for some months. So it is fairly likely that, at least it's possible, that the Russians have done that as well, after we've already seen it from the Ukrainian side as well. And we have news for the mobilization, good news for Ukraine, I guess. The efforts to register for the draft has led 3 million to update their data, among that with a new app for the Ukrainian government to know who is eligible for the draft for mobilization. So 3 million data sets have been updated, which should allow the Ukrainians to solve their manpower issues fairly soon if they have the political will and interest to recruit the necessary amounts. The data is now at least available. In the political sphere, we have some news about the payback Russia does to those who aided them. Iran will reportedly send 2 satellites into space with the aid of the Russians soon, and North Korea's economy has grown in 2023. The heavy industry that would roughly be said is connected to the war effort, so steel, aluminum, things like this, they have grown by 8%, showing that the money that is coming from Russia to pay for all the ammunition production is having an effect on the North Korean economy as well. And from the Ukrainian president, I guess is fairly good news, we should say, because he said, Zelensky said that Trump told him, "You have my number, call me if you have questions." So a channel is open between the two, which will obviously have to be used in bigger amounts before the US election, should Trump win it. The US, with being the biggest aider, the biggest helper for Ukraine, will play a massive role here. And the fact that Zelensky and Trump are in conversation can only be considered good in the current context, at least. And in international support, we have one small news, and that is that Germany has sent a small new aid package. And while there are some ammunition, no artillery shells, though, some armored recovery vehicles and other things. Among the aid was also a fresh lot of 8 new Leopard 1A5 MBTs, so more of the Leopard 1s are coming to Ukraine. But that was it already for today's situation report. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section. What do you think about the current events and about Ukraine's cooperation with rebels in the Mali to fight Russian mercenaries? And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.